We have Michael P. Cool with Ascension Parish talking about the MS4 permit and the minimum control for measure 3, the illicit discharge detection elimination.
Without further ado.
Without further ado.
Now, I want y'all to look, just feel free to communicate as we go down. And like she said, illicit discharge detection elimination is one of the measurable goals of the MS4 permit. And it's what Ascension Parish has been devoted a lot of attention to, say, last quarter to first quarter. Last quarter 23, first quarter 24. Or last quarter 24, first quarter 25. Y'all know what illicit discharge elimination detection means, all right? You can understand that part. I might need to see some. And of course, we all know where Ascension Parish is, right? We don't have to really get into that here. You know, let's just bypass that. Clean Water Act, if y'all can understand, you know, Bayou Manchac and the TMDLs really pushing this. The MS4 permit is part of the Clean Water Act. It's a branch off the Clean Water Act. And the MPDS is for point sources and non-point sources. We all understand that. Clean Water Act, that's just a little synopsis of what it is, when it was established. Let's get down to the good stuff though. All right, the impaired water bodies, as I've said, the impaired water bodies is a driving factor. The 303D list, DEQ, you know, I email like updates. How often do they update a 303D list?
Every 2 years.
All right, so I should get an update when I register with DEQ for the updates, so I better get it, correct?
Yeah, and then sometimes they have corrections or supplements.
The impaired water bodies, let's just give you a little synopsis of the subsection. Bayou Manchac, Amy, New River. New River, we've been spending a lot of time with the headwaters of New River. We've been doing a lot of the trailer park clusters. To give y'all a heads up, we've been tasked with making sure outfalls from sewer treatment plants at trailer parks are within compliance. And the majority of the trailer parks in Ascension Parish are connected to subsection 04 and 04 and 04. That, you know, so we've been spending a lot of time trying to, my IDDE stuff that I've been doing a lot has to do with New River. This is basically the definition what the MS4 stand for. And this in case you don't know, municipal separate storm sewer systems. And it's basically the conveyance systems of the parish. Roads, drainage systems, municipal streets, catch basin, curbs, gutters, ditches, man-made canals, storm drains. That's what makes up the MS4. That makes sense? So we got an idea of the drainage for the parish. And this is what I want to get into. Illicit discharge definition. Some people interpret this differently. You know, I do had this discussion with CK, one of our consultants. The task we got right now is we're sampling, like I told you, we monitored every trailer park in Ascension Parish. There's 52 trailer parks. And we're sampling everyone that's permitted that has an outfall with a DEQ discharge permit. And we determine if the limits are being met. And my interpretation of illicit discharge is anything that exceeds that MPDS limit. When it comes out that outfall and it exceeds whatever the limit is for fecal, whatever the limit is for dissolved oxygen or TSF, that's considered illicit discharge. And I've taken the position that once we detect it, we're going to go in and try to eliminate it. So that's what we're doing right now. We're in the process of making sure they're chlorinated properly, running aeration properly. So it's kind of an education mode right now. But as you can see, it's any discharge to a municipal system, and we said the system is basically the conveyance system that's not composed entirely of stormwater. So, entirely of stormwater is the question. A lot of people question me about the sewer systems are exempt, and I tell them, see, the enclosed portion of a plant where the treatment occurs, and once it gets through that pipe and it comes to into our MS4 system, the conveyance system, now it becomes, it's part of our system. So as long as you're doing this and you meet that DEQ limit, it's not an illicit discharge at this point. So that's what we're doing. We're spending a lot of time. Like I said, there's 52 trailer parks. We've sampled 48 trailer parks. And we have a 70+% failure. So right now, what I'm doing right now is working on correspondence and getting these owners to get in compliance. And you've got, of the 70% failures, I got 50% compliant, willing to do what needs to be done. Now we got a lot in the process of being sold. So you got transitions that's going on. And so I'm currently working on what I call my second phase of addressing correspondences to the ones that are not compliant. I've sent a letter acknowledging a date we sampled, I attached the data, and I asked them to submit something to me. What are you going to do to correct this situation, and how are you going to get in compliance? So of that 70% that failed, 50 of them have submitted documentation of what they're going to do, and a lot of them are doing it. This is a little.
Yes, quick question. Does this, does this also extend to Bayou Francois?
Yeah, well, Bayou Francois, if it goes back, that's part of the New River.
Right, okay.
That's part of her,
The New River subsegment.
the subsegment, and he educated me actually, because I was only looking at New River, but actually, it's everything that intertwines into New River is part of it all. So Bayou, that's what I'm saying, the majority of the trailer parks are on that subsegment.
Yeah.
There's not a lot of trail, like Donaldsonville, Bayou the food side, there's only one. So when you start looking at where the trailer parks are, they within the boundaries of the New River subsection.
Quick question, and this is only point source, not point like parking lots or anything?
No, right now, FECA is a very large driver for the TMDL in these waterways. So I've been asked from direction of administration to focus a lot of attention on, so right now they're in the process of getting their renewal licenses. All these trailer parks gotta have a license to be a trailer park in the parish. So they've taken this as an opportunity and they've added this. Before, they just had to worry about their steps and their lighting and their, all physical cosmetic things. Now we've added compliance. Now I've got a few, there's not a bunch, but there's some that aren't even permanent. Don't even have, so.
That's what I wanted to ask you. How many did you find that were not permitted?
All right, look, I'm trying to do a visual on my spreadsheet. 48, I would say 12 to 15. 12 to 15 are not permanent. And so, and then when that occurs, I assist them. I assist them with the NOI. I put them in communication with small business assistants and
Right.
DEQ. So we kind of hold their hand the whole way.
Yeah.
And so majority, there's a lot of them in the process of getting, and how I look at it from a licensing standpoint, to get to renew their license, if I got a copy of the NOI and it's been submitted to DEQ, I'm not gonna hold DEQ's review time against them.
Right.
Because DEQ might take 2-3 months to actually review the NOI. And now what I'm actually trying to do is make sure they email me the electronic copy of the NOI before submittal to DEQ to make sure it's all completed correctly. That way, when it goes to DEQ, there's not a delay. When Sunshine McManus gets it, it gets into EDMS and they get their permit.
Does
So
this include, like RV parks that aren't really trailer parks per se?
Well, that's being addressed because, we're trying to determine what considers an RV versus what's a temporary residence versus a permanent residence. So we let the council come up with that right now, and, 6 months seems to be, because most turnarounds at a plant come in at the 6 month. And there's a lot of plant workers that will come in and use an RV and stay for 6 months and leave out. So we're trying to determine what would you consider permanent resident? A year, 2 years, 3 years? So that's, you know, because we're looking at it, because a lot of RV parks, what I've noticed is they tie in multiple RVs into a septic system, a septic tank. And then some septic tanks are tied into one pipe and they've got one outfall. So we actually have sampled that one outfall, you know, but we're still working on the legalities of where they fall. So that's a good question, actually.
Yeah, well, I would think too that, you know, if they're there for 6 months, that should be different than what you think of it, just like somebody's in for the weekend and looking for a camping spot, you know? That's a short-term rental or medium term.
Any suggestions?
Yeah,
It's
we
just
got one
like
by
food
us, we
courts,
got
okay?
one by us, it used to be a regular trailer park, and now it's almost all RVs, but they're there all the time.
But even if they're not there all the time, is it always like a
Yeah, that's what I'm
cycling of
thinking.
people? If there's
I don't
always,
know.
right?
I don't know, I'm just saying, it's not mobile homes anymore, it's RVs, and it looks like the same RVs are there all the time.
Yeah.
Yeah, because we got one, Trayville Court is in Sorrento, and a majority of them are RVs, but they've been there forever.
Mhm.
And that's one of the ones that's not permanent, actually.
But the park gets the permit, not the individuals, correct?
Yeah,
Yeah, it should be.
they got a sewer lagoon, see, that's a whole nother thing too. I never realized how many sewer lagoons the parish has. There are several sewer lagoons in this parish. And sewer lagoons need to be fenced off. And preferably a chain link so you don't prevent the sunlight, et cetera. Supposed to have some aeration, it's supposed to be labeled. You know. In the early years, what I noticed when I started researching a lot of this, when the parish started becoming populated, and trailer parks started being created in the parish, the 70s, majority of them were the 70s. Evidently, sewer lagoons was the option. Because my educated guess is they dug some dirt probably to build up some property so they can park these trailers, and then they turned around and pushed all the sewer to the new dug pump. And so, and in my 48, you know, half of them are sewer lagoons, half of them. And that's a whole nother rules and regulations that apply to that also, besides the treatment plants. But we understand what illicit discharges are. And fecal is my concentration, but I'm gonna show you in a minute. There's multiple things that are considered illicit discharge. Multiple. This is just a little diagram showing you, hey, how's it work, how's it getting our waterways. That's just kind of key actually, but you can look at it and get an idea. You know, and I actually, I go to I just started this, let me get it right, primary school, because it's every 4th and 5th grade. I'm starting to do 4th grade in the spring or vice versa. I'll go into the 4th and basically educate them on trash and pollution and how it gets to the waterways. And so I go and y'all seen the posters, I got a set of posters, and it's really interesting, but I'll go to the 4th, it's about a 40-minute talk. And then I'll come back, I'm gonna do one fall, one spring. And I'm gonna do 4th grade and 5th grade, that way 4th graders get it twice. So hopefully you plant a seed, and you'll get a generation of people growing up that's just not gonna throw trash out the window anymore. And that's gonna understand how the pollution's getting to the waterway. It's gonna appreciate clean water, clean air, etc. That's something else we've taken on in the Ascension Parish. Y'all's regional manager or Capital Region sends all the incidents for Ascension Parish and addresses to me. We address it. If I can't resolve it, then I'll get DEQ more involved, because DEQ, they're not big on enforcement as they used to be. You know, so I'll try to address them first, and then if I seriously need, then we go to it from there. So that's another whole thing that we're taking on, you know.
No, education to prevent it is far easier than trying.
And I do look, and I just started this, I'm not sure when my talk was, when I just did an internal MS4 presentation to our staff as a whole, not just where I work. DPW, Parks and Recreation. I've had everybody come in here. I had administration come in here. The more people that understand what MS4, because y'all got MS4 has been required, what, 20 years? Would y'all get 20 years?
About 20 years.
Okay. Ascension Parish for 17 of those 20 years have only been worried about construction, stormwater construction inspection, meaning silk fences on construction projects, sediment tracking, trash in a subdivision development or commercial development. What we've done now, we're working on, that's 2 of the measurables. You got 6 measurable goals, so they only worked on 2, now we're working on the other 4. So if you can get an idea, that's where we're at. And this, as a parish, we're really putting a lot of effort into the illicit discharge detection, because my ultimate goal is if you can eliminate 1 and then you eliminate 2 and you eliminate 3, it's gotta have a result, a positive result on Bayou Manchac, a positive result on New River, Bayou Francois, Black Bayou, all these waterways. So that's where we at, because right now I'm actually with DEQ's assistant, because they got a surface water, what do y'all call them? They got a lot of data from sampling y'all been doing how many years?
It's 1958.
Well, currently.
Oh, well, New River,
The current,
started in 2020.
but at least a good 3 years, well,
Yeah, 3,
right?
4 years.
So there's a lot of data, so I got an idea where in the surface water bodies, we have the higher concentrations. Now I'm trying to work on everything that ties to them surface water bodies, where all the different outfalls are, and which ones are contributing to them high concentrations, if that makes sense. So that's where we at right now. We're in the detection mode. And once we complete the detection mode, we're gonna get into the elimination mode. And depending on, like, some of them, if it's really bad, we'll shut them out from discharging into the MS4. And there's some legality, but, we're working out through it, because this is like ground root stuff, if that makes sense.
So does the parish have the legal means to do that?
Yeah,
Y'all have any ordinances?
yeah, we have an ordinance in place that says I can actually come and stop you from discharging into the MS4. But we do a tier approach, because administration, you just don't want to come out, somebody doing something and boom, eliminate it. There's a process where, I notify you, we explain it to you, we show it to you. And if you continue, then there's another process where then I commit you a violation. Then if that doesn't work, then I'll penalize you. Then once that doesn't work, then we're gonna cease to terminate your discharge. So it's, like I've got one, I worked an incident not too long ago where DOTD awarded a contract for District 61, which involved Ascension Parish, a company to go out and clean out storm drains, sewer, the ditches that fall onto Highway 22. And they just so happen to go dump their contents in a place where they shouldn't have done this. So we got involved in it, and the battle between me and that company was, he said, well, this is not an illicit discharge. And I said, well, all right, prove to me that none of that material you gathered from the dishes has no fecal concentration. And they tried to come back and say, well, if it is, it's a DEQ problem, which is not true. DEQ don't regulate all the regular residential tailpipes. Yeah, but so I don't think, it's more of an education thing. People don't understand that the MS4 actually involves protecting that conveyance system. Everybody takes the notion that DEQ or DHH handles it. So we're trying to educate what the MS4 means to the residents of this parish. Does
Yeah,
that
the
make
point
sense?
is just don't dump stuff in the waterway.
Huh?
Anything.
Well, you gotta realize that people have been doing a lot of things for a long time.
Oh, yeah.
And until you, It's a mindset. Until you change your mindset, it's not gonna change.
Isn't Central or Denham, where they can have like trash pickup?
I mean, I'm working one right now, and it's a solid waste dump site. But we're trying to handle it without getting DEQ involved. But, you know, these people keep dumping trash right on the body.
That's because we don't have parish-wide trash pickup.
Yeah, like Gonzales, we have, city trash.
But that's Gonzales, I'm in
Yeah,
Fairfield.
like Fairfield,
Yeah.
like 6%.
As I say,
Where if you don't pay for someone to come pick up your trash, then.
You have to pay for somebody to do it.
Exactly.
Or
And then
you
it's
dump it
abandoned, they
somewhere.
gotta do it
Yeah, but it's
anyway.
not handled through the parish. It's like Gonzales, you pay for your water, your sewer, and your trash, pick
Yeah.
up one fee.
But even the people who pay for private people to come and pick up their garbage, it's what's in a can. It's not their bulky trash and,
Correct.
yeah.
Yeah.
You put a mattress, you're gonna dump it on the side of the road somewhere instead of.
Well, and then in Prairieville, they got HOAs everywhere that'll find the people, and they can't get their trash picked up, and they gotta get rid of it some kind of way, so.
That's actually how we found out about this truck dumping, what they were dumping. They technically didn't have a HOA, but there's a lady in the neighborhood who claims to be she's the neighborhood watch.
The queen,
She
queen of the
even
neighborhood.
took a video for me. She took a video of the guy doing it. And so she emailed it to me, and then, you can see the guy opening the valve and dumping, but you couldn't see no name on the side of the truck, you couldn't see no license. So it took some research to figure out what was going on, and it turned out to be a DOTD contract. Because when I communicated with DOTD, my DEQ days are generator. All right, DOTD, y'all the generator of this. Oh, no. We word out contracts that the contractor is responsible for. So then I get a copy of the contract. The contract was 200 pages maybe, so once you get through this contract, you find that there's a prime contract out in New Orleans, and this is a sub to the prime. So when you did your research, you basically tell them, hey, and so I put it on them to prove to me that what you discharge is not an illicit discharge. Prove to me, so, but that just gives you one idea of what we're dealing with, in the parish. Like you said, this parish in 2000 had under 30,000 people. Very rural area, so people are very used to dumping tires,
Yeah.
mattresses, gas,
Actually, I got another quick question for you. Does Ascension Parish pick up hazardous waste?
We have a hazardous waste pickup day where you can bring it 2 times a year, where you can bring it to DPW. And then they have a contract with a firm that handles the material and transports it and gets it.
How do you find those dates? It seems like I can always find them.
Go to
I can always
DPW.
figure out when they work, never when they.
Yeah, get on the parish website, and who heads that up, I wish I could give you, her name is Eileen Pruitt. Miss Eileen Pruitt handles solid waste recycling, the hazardous waste, and all of it. Right now, I'm waiting on all of her numbers for 2024, so I can turn it into my annual report, so I just communicate with her. But it's twice a year. I wish I could tell you.
You
what
usually
it
put
is.
it out if you get the Facebook, follow the Facebook page and put it on
Yeah,
the
I'm not
announcement.
the
But it's usually at Lamar Dixon now.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not a Facebook person either, so.
But they do have, that's the only, yeah, you try
But
to
it's
find
twice
anything
a
on the
year.
website,
Well,
you can't find it on
And
the
the thing
website.
of it is that I've seen multiple times now where I find a 5-gallon bucket of used oil floating down by Francois, or
Mhm.
any kind of chemical like that, but I don't know how to tell people.
Well, look, I got a
you know, everything.
stormwater email that's strictly for that. And it's stormwater at apgov.us.
Okay.
Here, that's it. So if you ever see anything, email the information to me, and I check that on a regular basis, but that's basically all my complaints come to. It's a dedicated email, stormwater at apgov.us. And that was created just for that, because I'm me, I got 2 guys that work for me, so And we're trying to do a lot in this parish, so there's a lot more people out there that I'm trying to give public awareness to and educate. You know, my eyes are the greatest in the world, but if I can get another 200 set of eyes out there that understand what we're trying to do and can communicate with it, it'll make a difference.
That's perfect, that's why we came, right.
You know, but this right here gives y'all a few examples, all changing, you know. There's a few people still change their own oil out there, but they think the storm drain is a place to dump it. You know, and, y'all be amazed how, that happens. And you got some people who believe in, frying goods in their own homes or have a family function and where you think the grease is, you know.
Also, even like people mowing their grass and putting the leaves out.
Thank you. That is one of my biggest pet peeves, is these people mowing their yards
You
and
just
then
spray the grass out.
they spray the grass out to the street.
Yeah, yeah.
That's a hazard to the people on the road, too. Have
And
you
then you
thought
got-
about, doing, I know this is probably early in the game, but I know, like, did stuff with, at the storm drains, they would stencil,
Yeah, we stencil, we put out 50 every year, we get ready to increase that.
so that raise
So
awareness,
basically
this
what
is
we
where
do
it's
is at
going.
night to give you a reflection so you can see where to go. You know, but, no, we stencil and then what we're trying to do, my goal is, once I really start getting into the schools, there's 17 primary schools in
Get
the
the
city.
kids there.
That's what my goal is, and then we're gonna start doing, and there's a lot of legality stuff and, you know, trash day. Clean up the you know, do a point A to point B and just clean up everything between. And a lot of kids are really motivated to do this, and that's what I know, I told y'all, I experimented doing my little talk to 3rd grade, 4th grade, 5th grade, 6th grade, 7th grade, 4th and 5th grade. Just like when y'all came to what school, then 4th and 5th grade, they're engaged,
Yeah,
they're interested.
Speak
Yeah.
to like the beta sponsors, because
And
they really do a lot of like the community service stuff that they have to get hours for. I'm a teacher,
Okay.
so, betas, you know.
Well, like in our case, it'd be junior, but
I mean, even middle schools really, because they really have to get, and at Prairieville Middle School, for example, there's a huge, you know, beta group, like there's a lot of them. And I know they all have to get hours, so.
yeah, they wanna actually do a spot. We have a gator. Somebody dresses up as an alligator and he's got a name, right? I'm just first informed of this, and so they want me to do like something with the kids to promote what we're doing now. You know, this is just discussed not recently, but
They're gonna put you in the alligator costume?
I don't know, maybe that's what they got in mind, you know?
also your scouts, that could be a good community service, like taking a large portion for an Eagle Scout project.
Yeah, I was gonna say scouting,
But that's ultimately what we're trying to get to, you know, we wanna let people know. I'm trying to educate, because I figure the children's gonna go home and tell the parents.
Yeah.
Oh,
And
yeah.
people are gonna communicate, the teacher's gonna communicate, so once you start communicating it, you bring more awareness to it, and then,
The kids will fuss their parents when they see them do it,
Well, I've got-
like,
when
well,
I
Dad,
first
you're not
started-
supposed to do that.
well, when I first, my trial run was the school my daughter goes to, and it's a little private school. And that's when I was trying the different classes to see who was, and I actually had a person in the class rode her little brother under the bus. She goes, and I'm not gonna mention his name, he said, well, he's the worst loser there is. So I said, well, what you gonna tell him next time, you know, and so,
But they learn that behavior from the parents. They see the parents throwing stuff out the window, and they throw the stuff out the window, but yeah, they will guilt.
Oh, they will.
And if they have a neighborhood cleanup, then everybody gets involved and takes pride in it. And it also helps build the community.
but yeah, you would think landscape waste, that's what I consider, I guess, your
Yeah.
needs. You know, we hadn't really addressed that, you know. I'm addressing some oil and grease right now, because I'm dealing with some restaurants. And we're actually looking at how often they should have their grease trap. That's a question for you. How often should you have a grease trap clean, that's economically feasible for the restaurant owner, but yet, you know, doesn't allow the grease to make its way into that sewer plant.
It's gonna depend on the size of it. You know, some of them have little bitty grease traps. They got like 50.
So we ought to
gallon
look
grease
at
traps.
basic capacity to determine the size of the grease trap? Cause I've got one I've been working on right now, and it's a very popular restaurant that actually somebody really likes it, and we could eat there when we come.
I think LDH would have, they'll be able to tell you what size grease trap it should have by the number of chairs.
Seats, yeah, that's
The
what it
seats.
is.
So if they got 40 seats, they should probably have a grease trap of this size.
But they don't mandate a maintenance schedule.
Don't know if they mandate a maintenance schedule. No, LDH doesn't. They only approve the installation.
Yeah, the actual design and
Right.
install.
But a lot of them just have like a little small 50-gallon or 30-gallon underneath the sink.
Like Sonic. Okay, Sonic's got a spot where they dump their grease behind it, right here in downtown.
Yeah,
And it overflows, so there's no, so we're looking at trying to put a restriction on how often you gotta clean it. And we're just looking at what, and I'm getting input from restaurant owners right now. Fast food guys, they want a lot more time than, you know, so we're trying to compile the information, and that's something we're addressing right now, you know.
Fast food is the ones that are probably putting out more grease.
It's, you know,
well, it's hard to tell them an exact, I want it done every month. Because they might have 2,500 gallon tank in the ground, you never know, you know? Which may only be pumping out once every quarter, you know? So I think it's gonna be size specific. Maybe go by the number tables in the LDH,
permit based on the design,
Yeah.
what it's called.
installation permit, and what the recommendations are from that manufacturer.
Also, I think the ultimate thing would be, the grease can't go out into the waterway.
Well, or just it can only be
They have to,
2/3 or 3/4 full.
Because once it gets into the plant, then you might put out the microbes, you got a bug problem.
yeah.
Well,
So then you lose.
And look what happens to all the city lift stations.
That's what happened.
You got all your city lift stations full of grease too now, because they didn't maintain them properly.
So that's something we're looking at. Another one, coordinated swimming pool. A lot of people are moved away from the actual chlorine and they go into the saline, the salt water, you know. But there's an ordinance that basically says you can't discharge your swimming pool onto your neighbor. And as the parish grows, more people, and I don't have a swimming pool, so I don't understand the maintenance wise, but I guess you decant your swimming pool at the end of the summer.
I think people's, float valves get messed up, or that's what I've seen anyway, where they go to fill the pool up in the summer and leave the hose running in there.
And this is not a lot, but this is starting to come up, because like I said, the population is growing. And more people are getting swimming pools, and we're receiving more and more complaints from neighbors about their swimming pool. And we're looking at, you know, making sure they discharge it into the storm drain. We're just looking at ways to handle it instead of just letting it flow out. Yeah.
When they overflow, it kills everything. Like
Yeah.
that's the most dead soil I've ever seen is working around with.
That's because the pool chlorine has additives in it that makes it linger in the environment, and it
Oh,
also
so
kills.
it's, all right, it's like heavy metals when it was in pesticides. you know,
That's why you don't use pool chlorine to disinfect a wastewater plant. And people say, oh, that's an EPA suggestion. Okay, but the law is that you're using a product inconsistent with its labeling. So you're violating the MSDS when you take pool tablets and try to use them to disinfect wastewater with. They don't work well in wastewater because a wastewater tablet is designed to shock hard and fast and dissipate fast. Pool tablets are designed to linger in the environment and to kill algae and other plant life. So that's why it's so bad to discharge pool
All right,
water.
so what would be, all right, I see what you're saying, all right. Yeah, so we're looking at it, because we have something, I read it the other day about, if it basically says you cannot discharge your swimming pool water onto your neighbor. You know, so the bottom line is, what can you do with it? And that's what we're looking at right now. And so when they install a pool, why don't they tie it to the plumbing system? Because you don't want it going into a sewer plant if it's on a municipal system.
Well, that's an illegal cross connection to the
Okay,
water
okay.
system also.
But it's
Everybody who's
for-
got a pool should have to have a cross connection prevention system of some type. That's for your water system. I don't know if you do water too.
No, we don't.
Don't most of them just like let it go into the storm drains?
That's what, that's, to me, it's the viable option. If you've got a storm drain, that you can do that too.
But doesn't that go right into your, if it has chlorine that lingers and it's going into the surface water, that's not good.
Well, it's got algicides in it also.
Yeah.
So,
And I'm sure all kinds,
which is not good for plant life in general, or minnows. You're gonna kill the minnows and so forth. If you had to make a recommendation, I'd say that, tell people don't stop fluoridating for at least a week and let the chlorine dissipate in the swimming
Yeah.
pool
Before
you discharge.
Because a lot of that will
That
evaporate.
makes sense.
I mean,
Right,
it evaporates
yes,
fast.
yes,
It's
it
pretty
does.
impressive,
Once the algae begins to form in there, it'll just suck all that chlorine right out of the water.
Yeah,
And then they could put it in the storm drain.
yeah, that's,
Right,
That sounds
you
right.
kind of neutralize it, if they would let it sit a while. But, a lot of pools, they got them tied in with the city water, and they just let them overflow, and, they putting out the good clean pool water into the storm drains or whatever, into the ditches, whatever. But, minnows aren't gonna live in that, I can tell you that. And if you got minnows, if you don't have minnows,
Then you have mosquitoes.
you got mosquitoes. So it's a hazard all the way around. But if you could, say people says, I'm gonna winterize my pool, I'm just gonna shut it down and pump it out. Well, let it sit a week before you pump it out, so that the chlorine can dissipate. That'd be a recommendation I
All
would
right, yeah, so basically before any, prior to your last shock treatment or center, whatever the terminology is, you gotta allow so many days before you can decant or.
Seems like that would be a good thing to work with the people that install pools and work on pools and help educate their customers.
Or, yeah,
Or the places they
And the
buy their
people-
supplies from.
probably,
well, let me try that, all right, here we go.
Yeah.
This is something, all right. This is one of the parts of the illicit discharge elimination detection we're really doing a lot of right now with outfall mapping. We're in the process of mapping every outfall we sample. We're in the process of mapping every sewer plant, and we're in the process of mapping every stormwater outfall. My goal is to tie with every outfall and how it ties to Bayou Francois, how they tie to New River. So when you do have that sample where the Goudin and New River come together, you got a high level of concern, I can look within that quadrant and start determining, and that's our goal. That's hopefully it's gonna be an achievable goal too. We have a very good water body map. If y'all get on the parish website, we have a very good map. You pull up the parish website, you go down to the lower right, and it's got the maps. You just click on it, and we do directional flow. We name our drains. They put a lot of effort into the mapping of Ascension Parish. Visual inspections, like I talked about. I'm educating DPW, Parks and Recreations, all the guys that are out there picking up the trash, the guys that are watching the waterway, my waterway crew. When the plant's getting away or trees fall, They looking for outfall, they looking for things that, and they pay attention. That's how I got notice of the masonry work people. One of the DPW guys were out there and he noticed all the cloudiness in the headwater of Muddy Creek, where Muddy Creek actually starts is right there at the flea market, in Prairieville. So they noticed it, so we get out, so now I'm working with them on that, educating them on how they dispose of their dust, what you call it, marble dust, which is a solid and it's suspendable when it gets in the water, so
So that's like a granite company?
that's it.
Yeah.
It's a granite company.
I
And they've been
worked
there
with
for
several.
25 years, but I had a talk, I had my MS4 presentation. Next thing I know, a DPW employee calls me and says, hey, just curious, is this something you are concerned about? I go out and look at it, I say, yeah, that's a plus. And a lot of them worry about paint cans and tires and, oil slicks and, now for them to see that, so now I'm dealing with them.
I've worked with several granite companies that had no treatment whatsoever, and I got them to put in pond systems with multiple stages in it, and they don't even really have to be that big. But they run those saws, and they got continuous flow of water while they're cutting.
That's it.
And I'm gonna say that for one granite company, it was about half the size of this room right here, and we had like 3 petitions in it, and the water coming out of it was perfectly fine. They
Well,
would
that just
pass
has
it-
to
It makes you
settle out,
it
right?
just settles.
Right, it just settles out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And if they have like a big busy week or something and it's not working real good, they can go put a little polymer in it. It'll drop right out. And it's nothing but granite, it can just settle in the bottom of the pond. And, when it fills up, cover it up, go dig another one over there. But get it out of the waterway. That's the main thing.
Water body sampling, alcohol sampling. What determined my water body samplings is based on DEQ data. And I'm looking at the elevated data, and that's when we showing our spots. And then high priority to me is that subdivision sewer treatment plant that discharges directly into that water body. We got a situation where I've got a subdivision with a treatment plant here, the water body's here, and there's another treatment plant here. So that's a regular spot that we're gonna sample on a regular basis. So that's part of the surface water sampling. So we're accumulating a lot of data and I'm coming up with graphs. And we're gonna graph the data, what the numbers should be, and we're gonna show the peaks, and it's gonna give us some totals, and it'll look good in the annual report. That's the goal.
The granite companies have to have a industrial discharge permit.
Yeah, that'll be the stormwater district.
Yeah, but it's gonna be
The
a little
LAR
more
or
expensive
something, yeah.
than a regular permit. Regular permit, what, they're like $300 a year or something, and this one's 1,000 or 1,200. But it has to be, it's gonna be that,
Okay, so the
light
permit,
industrial.
all right, when they do that, does that require them to do anything?
You gotta sample. Yeah.
Okay, all right.
Once, you just get them in the system of DEQ.
All right.
DEQ's gonna take care of it from there.
Stormwater sampling, we've only done a minute with them, and that's generally for complaint driven. Somebody complains that's a heavy rainfall, they noticing something coming into the ditch or in their yard or et cetera, we'll go out. But that's a very, very few incidents there. Okay, the employee awareness is what I'm telling you. I do a presentation with our employees internally, so they can be aware of what to look for, And I'm actually working something that I can hand it to them on a sheet. Examples of all of what illicit discharge is. I actually added a slide in the MS4 presentation that gives them examples, so they can visually see something out there and they can compare, So you gotta realize these guys, some of them got high school education. None of them pretty much go to college. So, you gotta make it very, easy to notice, and then my thing is, once they get it, then they'll know, but the problem is you got a turnover. You know, you get somebody that's doing well for it, next thing you know, that you don't see them anymore. So there's a high turn, especially in vegetation. Vegetation, right now, we're working on a standard operating procedure. So when they hire new people, they don't have to keep training, they can just hand them the document and then ask any questions that you need to understand what you're doing. But I'm not gonna, you know, if I've got 5 people in vegetation, I'm losing 2 on a regular basis, I gotta use 2 more to train the 2, you know, what's happening to the vegetation one. So because of DEQ, we're employing a lot of SOPs into the parish. That's very new.
But then the guys that are out there all the time and they're gonna see stuff.
We've got, you know, you got guys that walk the riverbanks, picks up trash, and you got guys that are in the boats when the trees fall, that when they can't make it to their sampling site, they'll call me, and these guys go out. And they say a tree falls like they gave me like a time frame. You know, trees fall pretty regularly because these drainage ditches and these rivers don't meet Chuck's design of how you design a water, you know, with his.
Well, they're all eroding away, so that they're gonna fall.
Well, everybody just does this,
Yeah.
you know, it's not
Vegetation.
chunks, you know. What you call your beach slope and your, you know,
Floodplain.
Natural channel design.
that's, you know, and then we're trying to incorporate that. We're trying to, you know, educate like Ron Langton, Ron Saville. You're trying to communicate with these people instead of just going out there when it's time to clean out, drain, ditch, whatever. You know, because we got so many complaints that come in when they got erosion and potholes and these things that are happening in people's backyards. And, you know, hey guys, if you come and change the way you design this ditch, you won't have to deal with these headaches, and then you can spend more time maintaining instead of responding. You know, do preventive maintenance so you don't have crisis maintenance, you know.
If I could ask you, sorry, I keep interrupting you. Is there any, what about, like, so what I've noticed, a good bit of, at least around me, is landscaping crews who come and spray the banks with herbicide and kills all the vegetation and the erosion happens super
It
quick.
is awful.
Yeah, they need to stop that.
And I don't know if I can tell them anything about that or not. I mean,
Well,
it's
we're
just-
looking at, I'm actually looking internally as we speak to what the parish uses. Because what brought this attention up, somebody made a comment, something to do with, I want to say dragonflies or certain species that we don't see no more. So we
Everything
go,
that the mosquito stuff too.
so now
Except
I'm
mosquitoes.
looking at the MSD. Through my research days, it's paraffin, something.
Parabens, yeah, I think.
You know, and so we're looking at the MSD as to what we buy, and instead of being cost driven, we're gonna try to become a little more involved. Because municipal inspections, I'm just getting ready to start doing our own inspections. I'm trying to educate Parks and Recreation, DPW East, DPW West, Lamar Dixon, and how to store your pesticides, how to maintain your maintenance equipment, how to, you know, so we've educated, now I'm gonna start municipal inspections. And that's one of the requirements of the MS4 permit.
Well, they should get away from using the herbicide.
Well, we're looking
Yeah,
at,
that's the fastest road to erosion.
Well, yeah, the body by our house, I mean, it's doubled in size, I feel like, in 3 years, like, it's gotten wider and wider.
Because the vegetation would hold the
that's just
banks.
the parents' way of not paying the landowner for the money and increasing the size.
And also when they're spraying
That's-
everything, they are killing, I mean, the mosquito spraying is killing everything that eats the mosquitoes, and it's not killing the mosquitoes. If you
Yeah,
try
yeah.
to tell the parish not to come to your house and spray, well, your next door neighbor tells you to go spray, guess what? Or Baton Rouge sprays overhead and gets across the parish line.
Well, and what gets me too is that a lot of this, cleaning up the banks and stuff is in spots that it don't need to be cleared.
Right.
You know, it would be perfectly fine just to leave it alone and,
Let it be natural.
you know, but I get it too, because you got, you know, companies that come in and.
People worry about a snake.
Well, we're trying to incorporate Chuck's natural
Channel.
design
Yeah.
and how.
Now
And the goal is with Ron is to initiate a contract with one of these companies that's done it, and then let them do a pilot, let them pick, and let them see the results, you know, and that's why when he did his talk to administration, funding avenue is what attracts administration.
Right.
So if there's some funding avenues that they can help assist with a pilot project or a company coming in doing something, that'll get it initiated, and then when the results are very positive, then that can have a long-term good effect with the parish going involved. Because we do have a very, I can't speak for parish presidents, because I've only been with the parish for 3 years. But Clint is very conscientious of trying to make sure the drainage works correctly,
Right.
and trying to make sure you're not destroying people and flooding people, you know. But now he's trying to be educated on the pollution side, the natural stream design side.
Value of wetlands, we've been working on them on that.
Well, they, you know, well, you know that they just purchased, they're gonna have parish retention. You're gonna have parish retention ponds.
Yeah, but are they gonna be vegetated, they're just gonna be big old dirt line pits?
Well, that's,
Like
they
the
wanna
lawn.
design it, that's where hopefully we'll start implementing some of the natural and we're trying to bring the people back outdoors. Let's get the children away from being in front of a computer and running a game and playing a game. Let's create an environment that we want them to come out, and people want to come out to this environment. You don't want to come walking on Bayou Manchac and there's trash all on it, and it's nasty and grass, but if you got something that's beautified and something that, you know, actually is an attractive thing.
I'd rather walk on a tree lined bayou than a barren ditch.
So hopefully, but they purchased 3 different areas in the parish, and so that's a ground floor thing too. And the goal is, with Ron, we discussed this, is trying to implement some of this natural design of what they're doing and trying to beautify and create walkways and parks and,
Well, just leave them natural and don't turn them into subdivisions.
well, that's another thing, you know, the current administration. I can tell you one thing, in the last 5 years, the amount of subdivision development as opposed to the previous 10.
Yeah.
is
Only because we
totally
had a
different,
moratorium.
you know. But we're putting a lot more restrictions, but we still need more voice, you know, because what happened, they have a public notice, and nobody's really aware of it, and they project, you know, they're proposing a subdivision in a certain area, there's not enough public involvement.
That's because when the public comes in, we all overwhelmingly say no, it gets passed anyway because the planning commission is in front of the developers.
Yeah.
So, I live by the lawn, you know that.
Yeah, everybody liked it when that 100 acres was a nice woods and.
Oh, it's beautiful, now it's this big, where it used to be a beautiful farm, you look out, and now
And then when they on
a
phase 3,
pit,
I
a
think
dirt hole.
they got 2 phases almost done on the houses. How many houses you say they got?
I don't know, but they cut the back part too, and the part that on the plans was supposed to be the wetland natural area, they bulldozed down all the cypress trees and it's house lots.
Yeah, there's an issue with the initial wetlands, and then you can't, 40% you gotta leave.
Well, they didn't leave them.
But that's my point. There is there's a lag between the enforcement side and the development side and what takes place, because once they start building houses, it's more profitable.
You know, y'all were watching them. Somebody approved all those lots where the swamp used to be.
Yeah, they got.
And the part that they claim is wetlands is those big ponds in the front, they don't even have water most of the time, they're just sitting there eroding in big holes in the ground, they're pits. There's not a tree one out there anymore.
Yeah, I wish.
The dirt, the dust blowing when they're,
Yeah, there's gotta be a way that we can maintain, so many hardwoods per square footage or whatever.
And
They can
that's
plant
good for
trees,
property
right?
values, which is what people, are all worried about in the first place. So if they just knew, they could better understand that even if the trees.
they can get 500
Yeah.
lots instead of 480 lots, that's what they're gonna do.
You gotta catch it on the end, on the front end, cause I'm from Livingston Parish, and you've got the same developers trying to do the same things, but the parish is on top of it right now. They're not allowing them to come put X amount of houses on a certain lot size. And that's where you control it, and that's what you said, how you get your planning commission when, the profit is 4 houses on quarter acre or whatever, and, I don't know the answers.
You have to set areas aside to begin with. I would just suggest though in that whole area of things, it's gonna happen on the other side
But
of the
they
river.
need to have a
there.
dedicated green space, and the only way to
Every
do that.
subdivision should have
Yeah.
a certain amount that they're not allowed to develop at all. The green.
Yeah.
Just to add, what was so funny on Bayou Francois, they built a bunch of houses in the last couple of years. But there was so much sedimentation from that construction, and the bayous got so nasty over those few years, that now that all those houses are sold, just about every one of them put up a privacy fence along the bayou. So what's
Yeah.
what's even the point of,
You don't even look at the body.
Yeah, I mean, you're like right on the water and, you had all this beautiful, vegetation and trees and all this stuff, and now it's like,
Well, it goes back to, people don't appreciate it. And how do you bring that back?
start with the kids.
Yeah, well, you gotta get them out in nature and experiencing it too.
Okay, let me.
But we are nature, we're not separate from. Let you finish it.
This is where I try to make my point with, sewer plant owners and operators. As long as you're within that the DEQ established limit, you're not considered an illicit discharge. And I'm not gonna just go and take your 4 times a year sample, or your twice a year sample, and make that determination. I'm gonna come and evaluate my own samples. And that's what I found out in our evaluation right now with trailer parks is a lot of quarterly samples meet the limits. My samples were nowhere, it got to the point where I would have to contact the operator. Because there's only a handful of people that maintain these plants that does these samples. And there are several times when I say, we sampling the same, or we're at the same location. So, and we're trying to get what's happening is bringing an awareness to it, but from their standpoint, the owner only wants to pay for once a month visit. So then you gotta communicate with the owner, you can't maintain a sewer plant by going through it once every 30 days. It ain't gonna happen. So then it becomes a cost thing. So that's where they're at, but then I wanna add the cost to the rent. So that's where we're at, But the bottom line is, I'm gonna still come out, and I'm gonna sample, and after my 3rd time, if you don't meet the limits in my 3rd sample, we're gonna fine you. And we have the ability, it goes $250 to $500 to $1,000. First offense, $250 a day. Second
Per
offense,
day.
$500 a day. Third offense, $1,000 a day. And I've just worked on my first couple of fines. So that's where we at. But once, and people talk, they're gonna communicate. So once they know it, I'm hoping the ripple effect where people are gonna get out there and maintain. And that's something else I'm trying to get the parish to do right now. I wanna do a course where all these sewer plant owners, instead of just telling these operators, I want them to come and learn. Learn how to maintain these sewer plants.
Well, it's their money that they're gonna have to pay if they get fined, right? So, if you want to.
So that's what, we're in discussions about that right now. But anyway, that was a big iffy. A lot of people didn't feel like that would fit into the illicit discharge for MS4.
Now, you know, just because a facility hasn't been issued a discharge permit yet, doesn't, if you sample them,
Oh, I
They're
still
still
look
in
at the
violation.
limit, yeah, I still look, if he don't have a permit and he don't have limits established, I establish the limit.
that's right.
When I sample, I said, this is what you mean, you know, I'm getting fecal numbers of like 60,000. And
Right,
I try to explain to them, I said, okay, that's a one event, you're allowed 400. You know, so, but 200 needs to be your monthly average, so, and owners don't know this. You gotta understand, the owners, the guys that own the trailer park,
right.
don't know, you know, it's the NWIs who maintain them, and it's the other handful of companies. And so I'm trying to bridge that gap. And the question, you know, like I said, trying to make them more aware of actually what's coming out of their trailer park as opposed to just worrying about collecting the rent. And so just make them aware, you know, it's part of public awareness. And then sometimes you gotta force
I
it.
like what Robbie said before, it's like, I mean, Ronnie, it's like, what we do, the work that we do, allows these businesses to remain sustainable, you know, by maintaining the environment.
Yeah, well, it's all good for the economy. 'Cause it all goes back to, higher property values, better quality of life, you know.
Nobody
So
wants to
all
live
this
with
is tied
sewage
into
in
the
the,
economy.
in their front yard.
Yeah.
What's that?
Nobody wants sewage in their front yard.
Right, nobody wants
They don't
that.
want their kids playing in the ditch and it's full of sewage. They'd rather it be full
But
of
it seems to
tadpoles.
be that nobody cares,
That's,
and it's a cultural issue.
so
Well, and a lot of
sometimes
it
you
is sticking
can,
their head in the sand too and
you
not.
can hopefully, yeah, that's what I
Like
call the
willful-
ostrich
willful
effect.
ignorance,
The
is what I
ostrich
call it.
effect is you just put your head in the sand and hope it goes away.
It's somebody else's
You
problem.
know, there are some that are being persuaded, there are some that are willing, and some are actually concerned. Some, you know, they have
Well,
children
some
and
of them, it just
grandchildren.
sits them in their pocketbook, that's how they get concerned.
Yeah. That's, yeah. And then once you do that enough times, the other one's gonna hear about it, this one's gonna hear about it. So ultimately, when I come and do my sampling, we're gonna get better and better results. That's the goal, which will eventually give us a better waterway result. And that's the ultimate goal, is to get away from impaired waterways and no longer be part of a 303 list or have a TMDL established. That's the ultimate goal.
Quality of life goes up, property values goes up, economy improves. It's a win-win all the way around.
Yeah, but you know what it is, it's that businesses don't wanna invest in it if they don't think anybody else is
Well-
gonna be following along, you know, they don't.
And this is my position I've taken with administration. There's enough good players that want to come into your parish. We don't need to
You need to
keep
beg.
the battle.
Yeah. We're not begging
You know,
people to come here.
That's my
We
point.
shouldn't be begging
You
people.
know? But that's my point, that's my point. But here, this tells you a little bit of the ordinance process, we do have ordinances. I'm actually bring copies one day, so people can actually have, you know, see what we've actually done. You know,
So,
this is what I've really been working with, explaining to people when it comes to the people side of things. You know, people took the assumption that, hey, I'm permitted with DEQ, y'all don't have no jurisdiction. You have no jurisdiction. I battled this battle, a couple of things, and finally, I've convinced them otherwise. So that's why I'm kind of, you know, if you just want to leave it in DEQ's court and you don't want to address it with us on a local level, you maintain them limits. But I'm gonna still make sure you maintain the limits. You know, and that's the position we take. And we're luckily in a municipality that has the finances where I have a contract with a lab, and I've got a budget for X amount of samples. And so we can maintain that, and my goal is to grow it. And, you know, so that's it in a nutshell. There you go, that's my closing.